first. And while you're at it, Nils, could you also give us a quick, like 30-second recap of the talk? So in case somebody's watching them in backwards order, and they're like, "Oh, this Q&A sounded great. I'm gonna go listen to the original one," so that they know what we're talking about and where this all got started.
So I'm Nils Hyoma from Hamburg, Germany. I like backlog refinement because I think it really changes the collaboration between the teams and can make the difference between traditional and water scrum fallish approaches and agility. And that's why I had a lot of discussion with Jan about backlog refinement because he's a UI UX designer. But if you want to know more about me, look up my LinkedIn. And why are we here? Because Wasco brought me into big troubles. I like to work with story points. And when I came back from a vacation, my really, really young team decided to work with no estimates. I had the awkward situation that they told the product owner, hey, our user story is too big, you have to split it. And then the product owner said, like, it's not my job. So I thought, like, okay, there are 10 different ways to split up user stories. Let's create a card game with all of them. So you can use them like Scrum Poker or Planning Poker and just throw the technique you think it's the best for splitting. And because this could still be a little bit water scrum fallish, I created other things like talking about your feature toggles, Git branching strategies, or gaining domain knowledge, maybe with doing job shadowing. So this is basically the backlog refinement cards.
Maybe I can take over and just also say hi from my side. Just maybe, Niels, you do like backlog refinement. I personally often don't like it or even dislike it because, yeah, it's just if the team is not really in the process and it's all kind of a mess and you have user stories or other items of hell or like where nobody really understands what is there and all the topics that might happen in such a backlog grooming session. So that's why I'm really happy that these cards exist. Just to do a bit of advertisement there too. About myself, I'm living in Stuttgart in southern Germany, working as a designer, but also having different hats in the team. Sometimes more in the Scrum or Agile world as well.
All right.
And yeah, co-creation with Niels is always fun. That's why I'm always happy to be here.
We love co-creation. Big part of the whole agile, way of life. Yeah, I remember when I first got into or when I first got into your video and was looking around in the card game and understanding what that was going on, I had a different idea in my head about what the card game was going to be about. And then once I started seeing it, I was like, oh, yes, this is about story splitting. And then you showed the other cards, and I was like, oh, it's story splitting and other things, and it's other things that you have to do in the process. And I thought the story that you told really kind of captured well problems that I see with my teams, where, the product owner doesn't have time to break stories down or put them into smaller stories, and the team doesn't know what they are yet. So they don't know how to break it down and put it into smaller stories, and everybody's waiting for everybody else to do the work. And nobody's getting started on anything. So it was really nice to sort of see the card and have like those reminders. Oh, here's something we could do. 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 To get into that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I just like really I enjoyed the thing on that and sort of the possibilities that we have in getting that and sort of reminding. So, how long did it take you to get to the discovery of all the different? Because you said you started off with like the first set of cards and you had space for more. So, like, what was the elapsed time that got you to discover all the things?
So basically, the time to design the cards was pretty fast. But I mean, Jan and we wrote like a few articles about backlog refinement together, and Jan has some UI input. So basically, we were pretty familiar with the topic, and it was something which drove me always crazy because I think there are like two different philosophies of backlog refinement in the agile community. The one philosophy, it's like a process where we have to communicate, and the other part is. I think it's more Mike Beatles versus Mike Cohn, where it's like, okay, it's a meeting. And this is like a quality gate, and I really hated it. So I had like so much things in my mind. I was falling down from my bike, and then I discovered Midjourney and the way to create my own images. So then I took around like 1 month to create that card, showed it to Jan, got feedback, and got valuable information.
So one of the things I find pretty amazing about your backlog refinement cards is that, to me, happy teams are productive team. I see that all the time. That when teams are happy, they do better. Their dynamics are better. They do the alley oops of basketball where they hand off work to each other in smoother fashions, more efficient fashions. And that happens only when they get along really well. When there's frictions between teams, then they will slow down. And that's why there's been a lot of evidence out there that a high-performing team is 1,000 times better than a low-performing team. And so a card game, gamification, which, by the way, I got to say that Midjourney makes me think of Magic the Gathering, which is something very attractive. Over 1 billion users out there in the world. So it's been pretty popular, and it's made a lot in the year. I may be exaggerating the billion a little bit, but it's made billions in money for sure. Is that it gives gamification gives a chance to really have teams have fun. And so what have you found with the teams that you've gone through that really clicks? What makes this work in your minds? First, I'll ask Nils.
What it makes in my mind, I think gamification always provides like a safe space, because talking about card games, I mean, you can just throw a card and then you can remove it. So it's not like writing it down like a comment in a ticket system or writing a user story. So it gives you like a flexibility. And then I thought, like, even if you have young teams, if you create a safe space with a crazy user story, so take them from their domain, from their environment where they're currently working in, then it's even more fun because you can hate the stupid product owner, not the real product owner, for the shitty story. You have to refine. So yeah, I see always like there's a lot of fun. I mean, we can discuss if you need to have fun at work, but it creates a psychological safety, and it can structure learning and communication.
All right, Jan.
Yeah, I think it is on a different level, as Nils said. So it brings in different viewpoints also. So that is something I really like, and I think that also helps to make this sometimes really, complex sounding topic of backlog refinement. And I need to look into something I maybe don't even like to look at. Way easier and way more fun. Also, just by having these cards there, I think. That simply as having these illustrations and the colors there, I think if we look into a Jira backlog, usually that's not fun, simply because there's lots of text, I think, right? And the other aspect I do really like, because I would also see myself on the scale from introvert to extrovert, more towards the introvert side, and having something tangible, something visual there, that you can maybe even physically put on the table, that really helps you, to be audible, to be visible, with your thought, with your idea of, hey, let's approach it this way. I think that is really something super valuable also for every team member that is maybe not as loud usually or as visible in a team setup. So I think there's lots of small things that somehow play together with gamification real nice.
There is another aspect to gamification that is really helpful in my mind, at least. A very common conversation I hear when we talk about estimates, which was something Nils already referred to, is that you need to estimate in order to be able to understand and split the story. And one of the things that I appreciate about the gamification perspective is that through gamification, you can introduce much more perspectives on the splitting of the story than you could if you were talking about estimates, because estimate is a one direction, one dimension conversation, right? You know, how big is it? But when you have multiple cards, you can have different people have different perspectives on how to split the story. And then we are talking about the essence of the work right? Like what tasks are we really splitting this into, which is much more informative and productive than, agreeing or disagreeing if this is a 3 or a 5.
I would say it's not about estimating, and it's generally not about splitting, because both are like one part of reducing the complexity. And I think the team should have on the one hand, the discussion if something still is valuable, or how can we split it into smaller but valuable parts. And the other thing is, how can we deal with the complexity? And I think which is important with this card set is that we have something like feature toggles or Git branching as an option too, so developers can play it, and maybe not technical product owners will be confused and ask like, hey, what is Git branching? Or how can we reduce the complexity? Or what is the backside if we develop like on a bigger branch? And exactly that conversation you want to have, because that means maybe more testing or other testing strategies. And so you have the conversation from the developer to the business or to the product owner. And this is, I think, really something important where you can say, like, now as a team, we can develop together a strategy how we get things done.
I would even go a step further, right? So when you go into backlog refinement, usually your goal is to be prepared for the next sprint or PI or whatever setup you're working with. And it might be hard to say, well, I don't really understand what's written there, because everyone kind of expects from the developers or the team members or even the PO to know what's in there and to maybe give a number there in terms of estimations. But with these cards, I can say, okay, well, me as a designer, I really always like these. We need to do some more research. We need to understand the complexity there. So we need to do some time box research is one of the cards I always pick as one of my favorites, or doing some job shadowing. So I think, of course, this really gives also the team the possibility to not always focus on the output in terms of splitting or giving estimations or having something ready for a sprint, but also really working with and on the story or the backlog item itself, which is, I think, super great. Also to just, if you're not in an environment where you usually are where it's easy to bring up these topics, so everyone kind of has the same options and the same possibilities there on the table. And of course, you can align. That's also something we usually see, I think, quite often. So if you give, for example, one user story to a team, they of course dive into it. They look at all the options they have, and then they start lining up and sort of formulating a strategy how to go about rephrasing or working with that story. So maybe they start with some research, then they start maybe splitting it, and then they start really making some sort of a plan of how to go about this. In the case we often run with teams, as an example, in a really huge user story, they really have in the end a lineup of like up to 10 cards, because they know from experience how to maybe go about it best. Of course,
so how do you do that? How do you handle that? Let's say that you're talking about something that, as you said, Jan, is huge, and they start lining cards, and suddenly you see that there are like 10 cards for things we need to do for this story. How do you handle that? Because that's obviously something that is too big to handle in one sprint, at least.
Yes. So of course it depends what is the strategy. Is it also only one team that works there? Often it's also interesting to observe that if you run this with multiple teams at the same time, or if they have even dependencies in between teams, that they come up with different strategies. They might have a similar approach, but different usage of cards. Of course, it really, as always, it depends on the context you're in. But what I would say, whenever you see a lineup of, let's say, 5 cards or maybe even 3 cards or more, that is a sign that this user story is definitely not ready yet for any sprint or any actual work on any increment that you might have, and that definitely needs more time. I think that's the first indication that is really clear. So you create that transparency. Nils, you want to
Yeah,
see
I
a
think
thought there?
Yeah, I think if you have multiple cards, I mean, that's pretty valuable. You could do like a dot voting on the cards, or you could the team let remove cards, or maybe it's okay to go with the 2 or 3 cards. But I mean, you have the conversation starter, and I think it should be possible in a team to vote what is the next card. So the next technique we will apply. Do we split it? Do we need more domain knowledge? Yeah, maybe it's ready then immediately for the next sprint if you can split it on site. But I mean, of course, if you have to go to the business and have to do an interview, it will maybe not make it into the next sprint if you don't willing to accept any risk.
And I really like that it focuses, like one of the problems I have with estimates is that it is a goal, how do you call it? Goal displacement, right? It transforms the goal of understanding the work into the goal of understanding the size of something we don't yet understand, which is kind of ridiculous when you phrase it that way. But that is what estimates are. Like they displace the goal from understanding the work to understanding the size. But the way you describe it is, okay, these cards allow us to work or to discuss the expectations about the concrete things that we would like to do in the context of this story. And that drives real, let's call it real for a moment, maybe that's not the right word, but real decision making, right? Because then you can talk, no, we don't actually need to do user research there because Jan has worked in a similar product in the past and he's done this before, so he knows what to do.
But I have one question, because I understand estimates a little bit different, because I mean estimates are a technique. I mean, on the one hand, the product owner, maybe he or she wants to have a delivery date because to communicate it to the stakeholders. But the valuable part for me is we have to reduce something from complex, so where we don't know what we know, more to the complicated area where we can discuss if we accept risk or we break it down into smaller tasks which are simple, which almost contain no risk. So if I'm using estimations with my team, I always have like, there is this one level, let's say 8 story points, and we don't accept anything over the 8 story points because we say it's too risky. And I mean, let's say we could accept like 10 things of 8 story points in our sprint. So it's not that we're talking here about velocity. It's just like that we say like, okay, for us, this is an indicator. We have to refine it more. So this is sometimes what I'm missing on this story point estimation discussion. I could understand why people are triggered by it and going more into the no estimate direction.
So what I'm hearing is really important. This is the aha moment that I didn't even get. To be honest, I have not gotten a chance to use the product backlog refinement cards with a real team yet, and I'm looking forward to that, because the one thing that I've dealt with, especially with product owners, even experienced ones sometimes, that they don't always get all the moving parts and the trade-off decisions they have to do with the team. And the cards show very visibly all the trade-off decisions they have to make if they want that feature by certain sprint, a certain time, a certain deadline, a certain event that they want to demo it for, whatever it may be. And so that really brings all the cards on the table, pun intended there, so they can really understand where they need to give and where they need to take to make it happen. And it becomes more of a focus on what do you want first, second, and third with all of these options, understanding it, versus how big is it as a target? When can I get it done as a target? As more, and what's the order that's the most important so you can get what you want in the time to have. So I would assume that your product owners involved get much more clarity and start becoming part of the team, as opposed to saying, well, just get what I told you done, right? Is that a typical result?
That's a typical result, and I think this is something using here the red splitting cards and talking about no estimates, because if I have like a big feature which I want to have to deliver and I'm splitting it down and I start to implement the most valuable parts out of it, maybe I will adjust my backlog because I realize that like 50% of the feature actually I don't need. So I think talking about release dates, it's not to pressure the team, it's more like to reduce the scope and focus on the most valuable things and then getting feedback.
Do you ever find that it goes in the opposite direction? Now that people have these cards and they're like, oh, I could do some pairing. Oh, I could do some research. Oh, we should do some customer research. Oh, we should do this. And then like nothing actually concretely gets built because they're going through all the different cards. Has that ever happened?
No, that never happened, but I had to laugh because I mean, Jan and me, we were presenting the cards in some workshops at conferences, and I showed it to my product owners just like a few minutes ago, and they said like, "Oh, there's a refactoring card. We will burn it. We will never allow our teams to use it."
Oh, that must have fallen under the table. Where did that
Yeah.
card?
The
Oh.
dog ate it. Hey,
No,
have you
so
ever
like,
had a
Thanks for
situation?
discovery card. We don't need this one either. Toss that one.
I would say usually we have the opposite, at least that's my experience. So people, for example, don't know, yeah, maybe refactoring is not the right example, but there is a methodology or a tool that people haven't heard of or haven't used yet. So far, I would say it is more of the positive side. Of course, I would also say you usually use. Say we use this game or would expect other people to use this game more with teams that are maybe not yet in a state where they really know how to run things. So if your team already knows what to expect, how to go about a user story that is not in a good state, then I think you would not using the game as often or as much would be my assumption.
But then we can recommend. I mean, there's a free workshop on the Myroverse, so the free platform for Myro with some nice videos. It's a user story of hell where you can do a lot of splitting. And our observation is always, if you run this workshop, your team will identify 2 or 3 techniques they haven't thought about before. So even if you're like a mature team, it's nice to open your mindset. And there's always, for example, one question is like, okay, architecture decision, what does it mean? And then, maybe if some people work more in a scaled, agile environment, maybe sometimes there's a need for an architecture decision. So people learning new techniques.
I really wanted to emphasize the aspect that this game allows us to bring up new ideas without actually talking about new ideas, right? Like they just come up. Like when you give the card set to someone and they pick up a card and say, hey, what does this mean? Now they are asking, what does this mean? It's not the product owner or the scrum master or the agile coach talking about, hey, we should do, I don't know, data flow splitting, right? Like they go and ask, hey, what does this data flow splitting mean? What is this all about? And it immediately creates a prompt for us to talk about more, I want to say, deliberate ways to discuss how to split the stories. And going back to Michael's point, the trade-offs, because here's the thing, we as product owners, we don't know the trade-offs that the teams need to do. So when we ask for a number, we ask for a number assuming they've discussed all the possible trade-offs ever and gave us the number that meets what we want. But we don't know. And the cards bring up the trade-offs, right? They make the trade-offs obvious and deliberate. And I think that's how do you say, an opportunity for much more effective decision making by the product owner, because now the product owner can talk about, oh, I think that this trade-off would give us this advantage versus this one that would give us that advantage.
So you're more following the philosophy that backlog refinement is a process and not like a meeting. And my question would be like, Vasco, what do you think? Like how technical or how much of the things should a product owner understand? Because some people say like the philosophy is like a product owner shouldn't they should not be into technical detail. And sometimes I see like product owners are too much into technical detail, and that is an anti-pattern, but just ignoring everything is the other anti-pattern.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, and I think that will be much more contextual than I can imagine. But I do like the idea that the product owner now has the option to say, hey, I don't care, you choose. Or they say, actually, from my past, I know that this type of option is better than that type of option, right? Like what I mean is, the cards bring up the quality and the depth of the conversation. And remember that the biggest duration or the biggest effort impacting decisions are done implicitly, right? Like we are making decisions without talking about them, and we say, hey, let's do it this way, and then it ends up taking 3 months instead of 3 days, like we thought, right?
I
Let's
like
not forget that.
I really like that point because when I was working on site before the pandemic hits us, I mean, it was like 4 days on site, and we had our war rooms, and it was full of like information radiators, some sketches of user interfaces, or like we had our Scrum board, our Kanban board, like physical, and people could walk in, and we could just show like, hey, this is the current state. And I see some organizations struggling, working too much with ticket tools or Confluence or wiki pages, because I mean, even you think the knowledge is explicit, you don't find it, so it's implicit. So, and I really like, this is why like I really like to collaborate, for example, with Jan, because he as a designer, he always pushes like we have to do co-creation. And we have to use information radiators, because on the one hand we get much better results if we do co-creation. On the other hand, we do so much change management. We have like so much understanding of each other just because we're sitting there and talking. And this just opens your mind. You can ask questions, and so I think information radiators and co-creation is like a big change between agility and traditional approaches.
I think one aspect I would like to emphasize, maybe the game itself, or the out. Let's say whatever the outcome is in the end. That really depends on when you run it on the item or on the user story you work with. But I think if you have in the end you have something lined up, you have like a strategy or a plan how to go about that story. That is not only helpful for the PO or the Scrum Master. I would say if you're working in a more hostile environment where even POs are really forced to explain everything to, I don't know, their management, to the stakeholders, then this really helps them also having something super tangible, maybe even orchestrated. Okay, we about this part in the user story, we will do some more research. At this part, we will split. This part is already part of the refactoring that is ongoing. This is really helping there as well. So not only inside the team, but I think also communicating to other teams or stakeholders there.
Maybe I can share two stories here about this job shadowing card, because I would say maybe for a lot of people that's the most unfamiliar card. Or you say like, why should my developers do job shadowing? I mean, a developer hour is like the most expensive people, and now they should like go out and work. So I was working at the airport, and then like I was half developer and half agile coach, and we had to work like a software for the luggage people. And the management said like, yeah, the software you're designing, it's for 6 people. They go into the aircraft and they're loading and unloading it. And I was joining them. I went to the aircraft and getting out this heavy suitcases. And of course, after 10 minutes, I was totally tired. But later they told me like, the management, they think we're working in groups of 6, but actually we're working in groups of 3, and we're splitting up. So our disposition system, I mean, if we would create it how management would have it, it wouldn't work. So, I mean, we saved a lot of money. And the other thing is, I went with a really young team to a company, and they installing like solar panels on the roofs. And then one of the developers said to the product owner like, hey, the solar panels, they have all the same size. And the product owner says like, yeah, why are you asking? He's like, yeah, because in our planning software, they will be resized automatically. So I mean, they would make like contracts and sending offers based on the system before going live. If this developer wouldn't have like asked this stupid question in the factory or in the construction hall. And I think it saved like so much money in such a shitstorm, so that I always can say like, okay, send your developers out to the field, and just like, or to sales, and let them talk. I mean, it's like well invested money.
Yeah, I think maybe coming back to also the ever always up question that is out there, is backlog refinement a constant process, or is it more of a meeting? I think technically it is both, usually in most environments. So technically, everyone should be keeping an eye on what is in there, at least in the PO, and then there are most often alignment. In this case, meetings where everyone comes together and discusses. And I would say you can do this, of course, in person. That is the best result also for sharing knowledge, getting to know the team, and all the team building generally. Of course, you can do that also remotely. And I would say just to also advertise some the combination of the cards with of course other ways of running a workshop and how to really make best use of the time as a team. So combining it, for example, with a design studio workshop. So you're split up in your Scrum team or with other.
Jan is angry with me because we forgot the card of design studio workshop, and he's a designer. I think to make the tension a little bit. It's a really nice workshop. Jan will tell you more. Like if you don't have money for job shadowing, maybe that's okay. But if you're product owner and your business shows up and said like, I don't have I have only money for like 2 hours collaborating developers with stakeholders. Maybe Jan, you should explain the design studio Linear X workshop.
Well, I will not say that this will solve and will be giving you the same results as if you actually go into the real world and talk to all the humans out there. This will never be replaced and will never give the same results. But of course, you can really share the knowledge. So the idea for the Design Studio workshop, just to go through really quickly, you split, you share your challenge, your problem statement, or your user story that you want to refine. Then you individually think about, okay, well, what do I want to do about it for some minutes? Then you come back together, everyone shares their approach. And then the important part is to really steal and copy ideas of others, combine them with your own. Then do the same thing again. So you think about, okay, well, I don't know, Nils came up with a nice idea and I combined it with some of Michael's.
I'm never coming up with nice ideas for user interfaces. I just steal them from other people.
That's what the great artists do, Nils. And then of course you do the same thing, and then in the end you come together and you can really align your approach there. And I think that is, you can do this in an hour already, and I think that is something also just another way of also going about the cards, especially also in maybe remote environment where you where not everyone can sort of look at one table.
So bing, 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 bing. That's Jan, where you're hitting that I've been wanting to bring up here. I mean, first off, Steve Jobs did have that famous quote of his. He says, "Good artists create, great artists steal." And Apple's become one of the most valuable companies, with Microsoft now leading the pack right now. But things will keep flip-flopping, I'm sure, as it has for the past 10 plus years. The thing here to me is that the cards themselves help people get out of their own way of thinking and see other people's way of thinking. So it's not thinking about the work, thinking everything around the work, and thinking about how their participation in the whole, so they feel like they're part of the whole with and breaking it down to pieces where it can be reasonably done in an order that everyone can agree upon, something that's very difficult to do. So I'm wondering, virtually, I mean, we're here talking from different places on the continent right now through YouTube and Zoom. And so how is this done virtually? Where are we going with this? Have you had any success with doing your card game virtually so far?
Yes, there is a workshop, as I said, at the Myroverse. Try it also free. It's you have an AI generated Nils and AI generated user, product owner of Hell, who will guide you through this. And of course, it's much more nice to play it on site, so you can print it out and just play it with 6 people on a table and we find the user story of Hell. But we were running these workshops like often on-site, not on-site, remote, and it works. Oh, somebody's sharing the screen. Yeah, there it is. And so, yeah, maybe Miro should implement some features that you can flip cards. But yeah, there you can see it's an airport story I told before I was working at the airport. So you have to refine a user story called skip the baggage carousel. So if you fly in Europe, you don't have to pass the tax or custom. So would it not be nice that you can do visiting Paris in this case here without waiting for your luggage? So basically the vision is you just do sightseeing there in Paris. If you go a little bit to the side, you can see AI generated Paris with like 3 suns and 2 Eiffel Towers. So that was Midjourney version 4. Now it's version 6, maybe much better images. So yeah, so there you have the vision statement, you have a user story. It's I wrote it in Jira, so it must be agile. It has a lot of comments, so you can refine the user story, which is actually more like a feature or something much bigger, and then you have some hotspots there which you can identify. So the challenge for your team would be to just drag the cards which you think fit there to the hotspots. So if you would zoom in a little bit, for example, there's one comment called Matthias. So he kind of like tells you that you need an architecture decision, and then there is a guy, Axel, he's talking some gibberish. He sounds like he's right, but maybe you should interview him because he's so smart, but you cannot understand him. So yeah, there's Matthias, so he wants an architecture decision, and then Axel there, he's talking some technical gibberish. So you give your team some chance to pull the cards there. So I recommend after you explained the vision statement, the vision and the user story, not the user story, the domain to the team, that you will give them like 40 minutes time to refine it. And basically the observation is like 10 minutes chaos and people are really confused. But after 10 minutes, people will move the cards and they will have like a healthy discussion. So if you do this with your team, the first 10 minutes, you have to be strong and patient because you're not allowed to help them. They should help each other.
Yeah.
And maybe to add to this remote setup. So of course you can take these cards, these images, and even paste them into Jira. So you could make use of them and say, okay, well, to this paragraph I want to apply this card, and that could even be some asynchronous way of working in the super agile ways in Jira. So I think. Not to do any more tooling questions there, but I think that is a way of if you don't want to run a big workshop, maybe because it's also not that bad of a user story, or at least you feel like it is, then that might be a way of just also keeping up with the team and asking for their input.
Yeah. Maybe if you scroll a little bit more to the right, you can see some results of an on-site workshop. Zoom a little bit, yeah. I think a little bit more. Yeah, one more frame, maybe. Yeah, okay, this is how it looks like if you print it out. And unfortunately, I was cutting the smiling faces because I don't wanted to upload them into the internet. And yeah, so on the right, you can see, I mean, here in the picture or on the right, you can see potential hotspots. So like in the beginning, the user story, it's a lot about splitting. And then if you scroll a little bit down, as I mentioned, like there's the architecture decision, which maybe some people said like, yeah, okay, we have to do that. Some time box research, which perfectly fits to an architecture decision, because maybe you should decide spontaneously. You should do well research, and I mean, different roles can have a different viewpoint. So maybe some architect would say like architect decision, and some product owner would say like, okay, you should do some research. So it's okay that there are multiple options. So it's about the conversation and the collaboration.
Fascinating. And Pete, thanks for sharing the screen. One comment, and like to hear from others as well, is that I know that a lot of the teams that I've worked with are always going through that tyranny of the urgent. It's like, we're so busy to get stuff done. We don't have time to do enough innovation and creativity. And even when you take time for that, it always seems to be less than the team really needs. And so when I first look at that, I go, amazing. It looks wonderful. How can I get the team to do this within the shortest order possible? Is there like a quick start or a short way? Because I don't think you're going to have Jan and Nils right there every time to be able to show them how to do it and make it quick. If I'm, say, a product owner and I like what I see, or I'm a Scrum Master or an Agile coach, and I want to get the team to just kind of catch on to it real quick, is there a fast way you would suggest through doing that? Is it pretty clear on how to quick start this so we can get people buying into it and believing in it quick?
So I hope it. So if you open it, and not now, but if you clone it from the Myroverse, there's a talk track included. So there should be, I tried that it's explained by somebody who's really talking to you, but I mean, it's my implicit knowledge. It's difficult to make it explicit. I hope I was succeeding. So yeah, please provide feedback. I hope the explanation of the workshop or the workshop itself is self-explaining.
Okay, then we got to get people out there using it and get that feedback going so we can improve it as it goes. Nothing's ever done, right?
Nothing is ever done. The cards are for free at GitHub if you want to download them. So we are happy to get feedback to include your techniques. Maybe you forgot something else than Design Studio. So this is like for the community. So please use it and improve it with giving feedback.
Here's a question. So I was dealing with this the other day, and I'm curious of how you would pull up the cards and play this scenario through. We were having to talk about the difference between essentially when the product owner says, you know, there's a difference in the question between how long will this take to get this done? And it's only really useful for me if you can get this done in 2 or 3 sprints. If it's going to take longer than that, it's not useful for me. What cards would you play in that kind of a scenario to help the team figure out how to filter it down, or how to get something going faster and not just taking all the time in the world to build it the right way, which may be more time than we need?
So I see two options. I mean, the one is maybe the obvious or the too obvious. It's kind of like splitting it. So focus on what is how to create value with the feature. So maybe there is an opportunity to remove scope and focus on the essential things and then getting feedback. If you talk about MVPs, maybe you should focus on what you can reduce. I mean, it's like you can reduce something on the user interface. Maybe the user interface can look really shitty, but the functionality is pretty good. Of course, you can reduce the functionality or the roles of users. That's always good, but I would say, like, yeah, if something takes like 3 sprints and you don't want to invest in quality, you really should maybe think about a prototype or a research task or something else. It hurts a little bit. It hurts a little bit if I hear like to invest like 3 sprints and then you get something with a lot of technical debt. So yeah, focus on splitting or reducing maybe user interface things or functionality.
I think like about talking about all the values and what is working software and so on. And I also personally don't like the word MVP. So in my company we talk about minimal lovable product, and I think that tells a bit something about the value that you want to bring with maybe the increment or the product you're creating. Of course, the cards can only, I would say, are a conversation starter. They help you create transparency, make a plan. They will not help you in terms of capacity or in changing the scope. So if you're already aware of the fact that that this might not be doable, then the cards, of course, will help you bring clarity. And of course, maybe you find a way to maybe do a first step and implement something, and you can then later on, for example, implement the rest in the sprint following up. But of course, this is something outside the scope. I would say the cards can help you with. So
But I can feel the pain. So first of all, we have a card for a simpler solution, but of course, if I spend a lot of time in thinking about a product or about a feature, and then it's too big, I mean, this is happening, but I could feel the pain to remove the scope or to cut it into smaller pieces, and maybe next time iterate faster over it, because maybe it's easier for other people if you iterate over it to give you feedback how to find the essential part and to let go of some parts which are not really necessary. Even you put a lot of effort, time to design the user interfaces or think about the user interfaces. Yeah, that's kind of like a divorce to split up user.
Yeah, of course. If you end up starting that whole process one sprint earlier, then you're better off. I mean, in the end, we always come back to the question. You should know what your backlog is about. Is it also the right priority in this case? And I see another thought there, Nils. Yeah.
I have a nice story regarding it where I can say, like, include your developers, because we had the task at the airport to connect an Android tablet to a Windows Active Directory, and I mean the amount of the complexity was just ridiculous. It was like 3 or 4 sprints, and then one developer said, like, they're getting the airport bus drivers, they're getting a bonus for every round they're doing. Yes, yeah, they're getting it. Like, okay, so why should they log in with different credentials? Because they didn't get less money. So let's just let them type in the bus number and then let them check their name. And they will never say no because they will get the bonus. And so we said, like, okay, this is our MVP. And let's see if somebody will not have the bonus. And I think they're still using it the way and never use the password. Just type in the number and then we'll look up in the database and show your name. And this was a developer idea, and the product owner was kind of like, oh, that's pretty nice. Let's do that. And was kind of like 20%, no, 1/20 of the current planned solution or actual planned solution.
All right. Well, we're coming to the end of our time here. So I'm going to thank everybody who's been watching on YouTube. Go check out more of the videos, more of the Q&As, more of everything product owner related over at productownersummit.org. We got a lot of content out there. And just keep scrolling through that page. It's broken up into different sections. There's keynotes, there's breakout sessions, there's live Q&A sections. And even all the way down at the bottom, there's a calendar of when everything gets released. So go exploring, find stuff that fits, that is fascinating for you, and have a look around. Jan, anything that you want to say to kind of wrap us up? Any final insights to share?
No, I mean, we are final insights to share. I think keep up the co-creation. That is great. That is fun with your developers, with your PO, with your team, or with Nils or with me. We're always happy to hear your feedback. And yeah, thank you for having us.
Great. Thanks for being here. And Nils, what would you like to say to wrap up?
Yeah, thanks for having us. But community, I need your feedback. The one hand is on the Backlog Refinement Card. The other thing is I started to co-create another game, which is on GitHub too. So it's about dependency management. So for example, if you need some external systems, so it's on my GitHub. It's for free. Check it out. Give me feedback. I'm not sure if I was choosing the right dependencies you have to manage. And
Nice.
have a much more fun at this outstanding Product Owner Summit.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. And enjoy the rest of the summit.